Sorry, we missed all your gratitudes. But like she shared this, so I don't feel bad sharing this, but she loved her car, right? She was thinking about something and just had shared gratitude about her car, hits this deer, right? All sorts of things. So she ends up getting a rental car, and the rental car is a BMW. So in her mind, she's been wanting to upgrade certain things. So then in her mind, she's thinking, oh, I hit the deer because I'm supposed to upgrade. In my opinion, that isn't really the case. It's just she hit a deer. It created an opportunity for her to then rent this car, which was a BMW, which then she had all sorts of learnings. And she shared a little bit about that, where she was kind of embarrassed when she went into the post office to be in this small town to be driving this BMW because we don't want to look like we're making all this money. Right.
Mhm.
And so then it's like, oh, what am I causing that to be? And partially because, particularly as women, we grew up thinking that we need to justify everything. And that's what our brain is trying to do, right? Is justify that, oh, well, you've got all this money, but all these things are going to happen that cause it to dwindle. Versus, okay, that's just part of it. And we learn and cars happen. I don't know if that answers your question. And sometimes it might be hard to accept that because we do tend to say, oh, something good happened, so then something bad. But in this case, the truck happened. She already had the money in the bank. But,
Mhm.
like where you went with it, and I could be wrong here, Chantel, but like where you went with it was, okay, she's got all this money, things are going well. She was able to write the $10,000 check to get the landscaping done. And then bam, here's the law of polarity in your mind, right? Which is not the law of polarity, but in your mind thinking, oh, then something bad has to happen. If something good happens, something bad has to happen. That's not the case.
Mhm. Yeah, it sounds like case just stuff just happens and then we meaning make out of it and we get to choose
Absolutely.
how we meaning make.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Right.
And
Like
that's
we connect them even though they're independent of each other. So
well, and then what I thought was interesting too, Jessica, you said I didn't have to choose. I don't even know if you knew. And I'm like, you freaking did choose. You chose to
Mm.
do the lawn, landscape, and you chose to figure out the car. You're just not doing them on the same day. But you did make a choice for in both of them, and so I thought it was interesting. I didn't have to choose. It's like, no, you did.
oh
You chose.
yeah, I see that.
yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, what is so I
And I want to go back to where did it go?
I really want to say something and then I want to like just set a precedent for me and and whether that everyone else feels comfortable doing that for yourselves or not, like that's,
Go for it.
but so I'm going to talk dollars for a second.
Yeah.
And this is one of those like, I don't know if it's a lot of money or not a lot of money to you, but it's a lot of money to me. So I'm going to talk about it for a second. So with my really shitty job experience with Blue Cross of Idaho, I negotiated a retention bonus at the end of last year. And with the goal of it to be like making up for the fact that what they promised me didn't really happen. And they were like, cool, we'll give you half of what you're looking for, but you have to stay for 6 months. And so I have golden handcuffs until the end of June. And if I leave for any reason, either because I resign, I walk away, they let me go, or they fire me, I have to give the money back. So I've got this like $25,000 that I chose to see as a moment of abundance because I met with Debbie at the beginning of December, and Debbie was like, we were going to talk turkey about this program. And she's like, here's the makeup of this and da da da. And like the very next week, they were like, this is how much money we're going to give you. And I was like, okay, well, that I connected those two. This is me having needs and the universe is providing, right? But I then 5 weeks later, they said, hey, some of the stuff that you negotiated while getting that retention bonus, we're not going to do that. And so they retracted some of the other earnings that I had negotiated that I would get this year. So I've sat in varying degrees of fear that I'm going to get let go and I'm going to owe that money back to them. And so for me, to have like, be ready to this project for the backyard total is going to cost me like 30 grand, which is insane. And to me, and like insanely awesome, but like also what the fuck. And so, and then this truck, to get a solution for the truck is probably going to cost me another 10. And so everything in my past would say, then definitely do not do the backyard, because what if you owe the 25,000 back? What if shit happens on June 17th and they let you go because you're too outspoken? And so like I have like this fear cocktail, you know,
Okay,
and
what's June 17th? Why that
it's
date?
a random, like I'm there until June 30th. And
Yeah.
so I have this like, oh yeah, in the last minute, you know, in the last few weeks of employment, they're going to be like, peace out. And then I owe them all the money back, even though I gave them all my time.
I just
And
asked because like that date, that's my son's birthday, and my second son, um, Emily and John got married last year on June 17th. So when you said the 17th, I'm like, what's the 17th? Like,
right,
it's a good day to me.
just random. So it's been a real
Yeah.
mix of like, if that happens, half of all my savings will be gone. Because I don't have like
So
$500,000 and I'm like, oh, here's 30 grand, you know?
yeah. So let's
So
talk through that. You know, like, and if you guys are okay with this, I want to do a little coaching and then I'll go into the teaching piece of it. But like from a coaching perspective, because this fits right into what Chantel was asking too, in the realm of let's talk about evidence banks, right? Because the fear is what's driving you right now.
well, I'm trying to overcome it by making different decisions.
Right. But then what's happening? Yes, you're making different decisions, but then it's sucking energy from you because it's still back there. Right. So when you think about that fear, and when you are looking at that, what if you do an awesome job over the next 6 weeks? Because it's really 6 weeks from now, which is pretty awesome. What happens in 6 weeks?
On July 1, I tell them peace out, even if I haven't found a new job because it's so bad for my mental health.
Yeah. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to reframe that slightly. So what happens on July 1st? You make the decision to leave and you feel a lot freer, right? Like focus on like, what's the benefit you're gaining from that, right? Because part of the like fear that continues to get bigger and bigger is even though you're making the decisions, it's pulling you over into that because you still have 6 weeks and you're afraid that in that 6 weeks, well, I know you well enough to know, and you just said at the beginning of the call that everyone that they talked to had good things to say. You are not the type of person, even if you're pissed off at them, even if it's the suckiest thing ever, that you're going to just rest on your laurels. Now, your inner adolescent might want to go, fuck you, I'm just going to like sit back and do nothing, right? But you don't. That's just not who you are. Right now, in your mind, because I know you well enough to know too, that your 100% is here when the job requires this. So if you go to the 100% of what the job requires, that's not lowering the standard, that's doing the job, right? I think it's important to context that. But in 6 weeks, what are you really going to do? Let's claim it. Because one of the things that Shonda Rice talks about in her book, The Year of Yes, is that when you say the fear out loud, when you say what's there and what could happen, you can release it. Because while you're sharing this, I'm going to be clearing energy. Like, so you might see me do this a few times, or I'll try to do it underneath. So it's not like, but like clearing that energy of fear, because in 6 weeks, what are you really going to do to fuck it up so bad that they're going to fire you?
And Debbie, I want to add on top of that, and that they would take their energy to even go after you. Like
Yeah.
it's like two hurdles. Like you have to do something so bad, and they have to muster the energy to give a shit about it. Like, because it'll take some fighting to get it cash from you.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
maybe not. Maybe you would just
And
write
even
the
if it's in a
I would
contract,
write the check.
right?
Huh?
So the root of all of the fear for me is I have never had money.
Mhm.
And so now I have more money than I've ever had. And even on the path to this in the last like 6 years, I I have fear that I'm not doing the right things with it. I fear that I'm spending too much. I mean, I know I'm spending too much. Oh, that's not fear. Oh, that's just fears realized. I'm like, I have a lot. Let's buy shit. Or let's,
And
and it's
part of
not
that,
even just, it's not always just like, let me buy stuff. It's about the fact that I spent so many years going to the grocery store, having to count every dollar of what I
yes.
put into the cart. And I don't want to do that anymore. And I don't have to. And it feels so good. But then because of my upbringing, and my parents would always fight about money and not having any, and and me trying to manage everything for my second family, and all of that feeds this like I it's not even like I don't have enough, it's that I'm not doing the right things with it.
Yeah. You're
And
not
so
worth it.
that
There's something
fear
wrong.
of like, I will have been on top because this feels monetarily like I'm on top. And I've struggled with feeling like that's true because I'm
So
just waiting
one,
to fuck it up.
right. One of the fears you have is that you are going to screw it up and that you're going to go out and spend all this money. So now that you're aware of that, okay, cool. I want to get this landscaping done. So we're going to do the landscaping. My son needs a truck, and that's all I'm going to spend right now. Because there is this, like, when we talk about the universe provides, the trust is there, but we also need to be grounded, because the trust that it's coming, that's the metaphysical coming into the physical. So the cash comes in the physical form, where we then need to be grounded. Like I had a meditation that I was doing where I was imagining this room, and I have a love affair with trees, and it was this trunk of this tree. And so it wasn't like round, but it was like, how trees kind of do their thing, right? And I walked in and it was just this glowing wood. And I walked in and I stood right in the center, and there was this yellow white light coming straight into my head. And then I felt my feet like plant to the ground. And the meditation, that particular piece, was about my relationship with money. Well, if I don't have my feet planted, then the money just goes out my feet, right? It's not planted in the physical. So the physical piece of it is being a good steward and saying, okay, these two things are things that I want to do and desire to do. Because you could tell your son, sure, let's go find another truck, get a job, you're going to pay for it. There's options. It's like you're choosing to do that. And being conscious of when we feel like having that much money in the bank feels different to you, having that self-awareness that it feels different, and stopping and pausing, and this goes for everyone, pausing to say, am I reacting to this, or am I responding? And am I responding as the person that has money, or as the person that doesn't feel like they deserve to have the money? That is that person at the grocery store counting every penny. Because sometimes what happens is the money comes in, and because we don't feel comfortable having that money, and that's part of the fear I was hearing you say, Jessica, we spend it all because we're not used to that story. So what I'd like you to do is I want you to take a second, and I want you to imagine yourself. How much money do you have in the bank?
Like 150,000.
Okay. So I want you to imagine yourself.
Well, 140 because I bought the hot tub last night. What?
Okay. So 140, that you are a woman that has $150,000 in the bank, that you have available to you $150,000 worth of cash. I want you to feel into that. Where do you feel it?
In my nose, like I'm gonna cry.
Yeah.
It felt like cool water that was like lukewarm, not too cold where it was shocking, and not too warm where it felt like it ran down to about here on my shoulders
Yeah.
and into my upper chest.
Cool. Now I want you to think about, because didn't we do the meditation about the movie theater, the best version of you, where we stepped into their skin? Sorry, I always do that because when I say to step into the arms, I'm always like physically doing it. You don't see it because your eyes are closed. So this feeds right into what I wanted to talk about today. So I want you to imagine that woman that you saw on the movie theater, all of you. And did that woman on the movie theater, was she a woman that had $250,000 in cash available to her?
She had more.
Yeah. Okay. So tap into that.
Okay.
Because when you tap into that, then physically your body starts to feel those sensations when you believe that you are that woman, Chantel, Shireen, and Jessica, on the big screen. And you'll pause for a moment because you'll try to remember that woman because you're stepping into it. Now, what I want you to journal on, and this goes for all three of you, so I'm getting to the homework before I get through the rest of the teaching today, is I want you to think about next year. So that woman that was on the screen, this woman that you're stepping into, and I know you're working on your vivid visions, which I'm going to tell you right now instead of waiting because I'll forget, that next Tuesday, will everyone be on the call next Tuesday?
I will be.
Is it Wednesday next week? Doesn't it alternate?
No. So the teaching call is every Tuesday at the same time, 10 a.m.
Oh,
your time.
yep.
Then
I'll be here.
our coaching call alternates. So the coaching call would
Okay.
have been a little bit like we did a little bit of what we'll do on the coaching call earlier as we were doing this. But then the teaching calls are what I'm getting ready to get into. So next Tuesday, all three of you can be there. Notice how I checked that out first. We are going to share our personal vivid vision on the 3 elements that I gave you. As we go forward, we're going to work on additional ones within that book, right? But I want you to share the vision. So your homework is, and if you feel more comfortable writing this out, you can write it out, but I would say speak from your heart. When you introduce yourself next week, you're going to introduce yourself as, my name is Debbie Heiser. I own a multi-million-dollar business that employs a team of people and helps them sustain a lifestyle that they like and enjoy. We transform people's lives. And me personally, I am making $1 million a year. And I'm able to do financially what I'm wanting to do and set up a foundation, as well as looking at property to either build or take existing to create an event center in Sandpoint, Idaho, as a destination place to come to. I am physically active and I'm at a weight that is healthy for me. I'm in a love relationship that, according to someone that I explained it to this weekend, is like Jamie from Outlander. And, do you see where I'm going with this? Like, I want you to feel it. So you're going to talk about those 3 elements of I am the woman who, and own it, right? And I want you to feel into it. So as an example, my coach, we were at a seminar called Lead in the Feminine, and she was talking about next year's, which is going to be about love. This one was about money. And she had asked me the question, what if you had a man that personally supported you financially? I'm like, well, yeah, because then I could just go out and make more money in my business. She's like, no, no, no. Listen to what I'm saying to you. What if you didn't have the pressure of making money and someone else was supporting you? And I'm like, right, like resisting. And finally on Thursday, I was so exhausted when I got in the shower. I was like, okay, universe, right? Like, here it is. Here's what I want. And I like claimed it. So when I did the piece, like half the women started crying. And then half of them came up to me and said, I believed like you were already in this relationship. And this one woman comes up to me and she's giddy. And she's like, have you ever watched Outlander? And have you all seen Outlander?
Only parts of it. A friend of mine swears by it, but I haven't.
I said, well, I've seen some of it. And she said, you described Jamie. Like, okay, well, great. Thanks for the affirmation. And so I want it to be so real that we all believe that it is happening right now. Because that's the woman that when you run into these questions, like you just did, Jessica, or Chantel, when you were asking about like the laws, and Shireen, questions that you have about like when you're moving forward, you can tap into that woman. Because then it feels, and you've gone back into it, your body has physical memory of it, and it spurs your thinking. Right? It doesn't mean that we're going to take the monkey brain and say, go away, because what we resist persists. Right? When the monkey brain comes in, you know, and they call it the monkey brain just because it's kind of like, I forget the actual name of the part of the brain. I need to look that up so that I remember and write it down. I usually do, but that part of your brain takes over. We know it's going to be there. And so if you just accept it, then it doesn't hold as much power. That's what she meant in the year of yes. It doesn't hold as much power if you name it, right? So I want you all to give some thought to that future meditation that we did and your woman on the screen. And what I'd like to do is, in 2 minutes or less, each of you describe things that you remember. So I waited on purpose, right? Because those things that come up for you are kind of the most prevalent. I want you to talk about, in 2 minutes or less, kind of that overall, how did you feel? Did you notice anything physically about this woman? Like, what stands out to you from when we did that meditation over by, I think we did it by the labyrinth, right? If I remember correctly. Thank you. Chantel, let's start with you.
Okay. I remember I have a vivid image of like there are rocks. It maybe looks like Moab or something in Colorado with that kind of red rockiness. And I'm feeling well. I'm feeling well in the sense I'm feeling fit and healthy. The sun is beaming on my skin. I remember feeling that sensation on my skin. I remember smiling. I remember feeling ease and calm. There was something about the money piece. It was almost like money is no object, as in it's just not something that takes up a lot of headspace. I suppose I have an abundance of it, so I'm not concerned about it or thinking about it all the time.
Yeah.
I remember feeling just really, when I say well, I also remember feeling a lot of love. I know my family was nearby. I didn't see them in the image. It was really just me and by the rocks, smiling with the sun beating on me.
You felt them
I
around you.
felt them. Yeah. That's kind of what I remember right now.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Jessica, what about you? And then we'll go to Shireen.
So me was at a book signing for my book that I published, and I was standing very, very happy, but more like joyful, confident, self-assured, and having conversations with people, smiling, lots of laughter. It didn't feel like it was my very first one, too. It felt like I was already in the midst of this tour, and that I could feel the energy and the buzz inside myself. This is what success felt like. And like at a deep and soulful level, like I am changing people's lives or perspective about their own life in order to for them to give themselves permission. And I could feel it.
Yeah. Awesome.
And I definitely felt very yeah, I think kind of like you said, Chantel, there was no thoughts about money, but there was what seemed like an obvious amount of success. Even in the clothes I was wearing, you know. Um, and I was um back at my goal weight. And
Nice.
so I felt good in my body, instead of like we've been talking about, I feel uncomfortable in my body. So I felt good in my body. I felt good in my soul. I was having interactive relationships while realizing, a professional and personal goal.
Perfect. Perfect.
Mm.
And so I want to go to Shireen here, but like as an example, Chantal and Jessica, I want you to introduce, you don't have to go into the level of detail that we just did, but I want you to introduce yourself as that woman, right? Like
Mhm.
Chantal, I am a woman who is financially free, who enjoys nature and being out hiking, like whatever that is, right?
Mhm.
Jessica, I am a woman who I'm an author. My name is Jessica Bonar and I'm an author. Like I want you to claim those things. Shireen, what about you? Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, so mine, as I recall it, was very limited. So I was, like I said, I frequently have this particular dress on, which I actually do own. I am, to use Jessica's example, more my ideal weight, not my current weight. I have these shoes on, so they're the heels. I did, like when you called out, definitely a much more feminine. And it was literally at a resort. No loss that we were at a beautiful resort when I was thinking. And I love travel and I love being in new spaces. So the light was very similar to the DR and bright and felt good on my skin, but it was more like Lake Como type vibe. And I was getting out of a car and going up into a beautiful hotel. Um, I also had no thought of money. It was clear I had an abundance of, like, there was no issue being here, doing these things, choosing the things that I wanted to do. I did not have my family with me. I was not thinking about my family, so curious on that. And then we went pretty quickly into the so then I was very visual on put your toes in, like, so I just kind of literally, I stopped on the steps. I was walking up to my beautiful resort when you said start putting your toes in. So I just stood on the steps.
Yeah.
But it feels, yeah, it was very just light, easy, worry free, beautiful light, beautiful places, beautiful people. Felt good in my skin. All an echo of
Yeah.
what said.
And something that I might recommend to all three of you is that it doesn't have to be perfect. So don't like feel like you have to write it down and then record it, but record it on your voice memo on your phone. And every day listen to it. Like as you're getting ready, like I have one too up on my wall that says change me, open me, make me receptive to the unexpected, blah blah blah. I have it here, I have it on my bathroom mirror, I have it taped so that I can listen to it when I'm brushing my teeth. Like listen to this woman, because what happens is you're reprogramming your subconscious brain. So that, as an example, when Chantel, if you get ready to go spend some money, you're not thinking, like, how do I say this? You're not thinking in scarcity, but you're thinking and feeling like this confident woman. And that attracts whatever you're wanting to attract, right? And Chantel, you're kind of in this moment where you're trying to figure out too, the purpose that you have in this world and that spiritual DNA kind of seed that you have. I think you understand that, but then like how does that manifest for you into then being able to create some financial freedom? And so as you continue to step into that favorite self, that thought may come to you
Mhm.
because you're looking at things based on what you know today, where if you start to embody that woman 3 years from now, some things are going to open up for you that you may not have thought about. And then the same goes true to you, Shireen, as well as you, Jessica. So
Yeah, a friend of mine's reading a book, Be Your Future Self Today.
Yeah.
And so like that phrase comes like who, and I think the book says like, I honestly, I think it's 3 years, or maybe I'm just interpreting that because of you, but it is interesting when you sit and you pause for a minute, and I've gone, okay, who would be in 3 years? Or I did like your favorite self,
Yeah.
how would your favorite self answer this question? And it's
Yeah,
just, it takes like 3 seconds, but it changes things, when you put that filter
absolutely.
on.
Well, and there's some science behind the 3 years, because sometimes if we do a 5 year or a 10 year plan, it's too far out and it becomes nebulous. Where 3 years, you can get your arms around, and sometimes people go and say, okay, by year one, I want this in year two. And I'm like, your subconscious and your conscious brain are working towards that. And you'll put together some things to create that inspired action. It's when we find ourselves not in aligned or inspired action that then we want to go, whoa, wait, there's something like pulling at our brain, right? Like there's some kind of pact or a loyalty or a contract or a double bind that's pulling us in that direction. And so, just like Jessica with the 6 weeks of fear, like think about that. Like, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do, Jessica. I want to tap into your adolescent, because I want your adolescent to go, you just watch me. In the next 6 weeks, I'm going to be such a stellar employee that you're going to wish you would have kept me and done what we negotiated. How's that? That's what I see you doing. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm not usually this like F words and everything, but that's what I see your adolescent. Like, let that energy come in, like, and go, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Cause then that takes over the fear, right? Like then your pie, the fear becomes smaller, because you're like, I'm going to prove to you that you would have wished you would have stayed with what we negotiated. And to that point, I'm so glad to hear you say you're interviewing other companies, because you want to make sure it's the right fit for you. So part of why I'm asking you to tap back into this woman, and please feel free, if you did not journal, like what you saw, take a little bit of time to do that so you can go back to that. Because as you do that, so I'm going to maybe blow your mind slightly. I don't want to get too caught up in the whole quantum time conversation, but there is this thought that time is compressed. So the past, present, and future are all here now. So by claiming this, we don't want to say it's coming, because if we say it's coming, then it's always going to be in the coming circle, right? Versus it's here and it's here now. That's part of what that universal law means with the transmutational of energy. And I'm going to leave you on the invites, by the way, for the private client calls. So feel free to show up when you can. And if you want to, I know our calls are on Tuesdays too, so it might be a little overload on Debbie that day, but that's what the law of transmutational energy is about. Right? Like that it's all here and it's all here now. It's just not in form, and we create the form in it. And so when you think about like having that idea of yourself, it doesn't mean that it's going to stay the way it's going to stay. It's kind of like, I want to look up that quote that I sent to you guys yesterday. Mastermind 2. This idea of the story of who we are, right? Like this vision of who we see that we are, because the best stories are specific, but yet they're flexible. Specific in offering this full vision with rich detail, even to the point where during a different meditation, she said, I want you to focus on one thing. And it was so funny. I started laughing because I said to her afterwards, I said, I'm not a foot person at all. I think feet are gross. And I said, when you said focus on one thing, all of a sudden my partner's feet came into my mind, right? And they were very specific. They weren't pudgy. They were like like just beautiful feet. And I was rubbing them, which is so like, I mean, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies even thinking about it. So not me, right? And so what's happening is my subconscious brain is already putting this into motion, right? So it's specific in offering us this full vision with this rich detail, like juicy. Like I want it like sexy, like, and I don't mean sex pot when I say sexy, I just mean like it feels delicious, right? And we sometimes as women don't allow ourselves to enjoy the deliciousness of things. So even as, and I'm so glad Chantel was talking about food as a gratitude, I want you to notice, like she was talking about how her tongue was just like It was like a party in your mouth. You didn't say that, but like so satiated, it was all these things, right? And so I want you to think about like pleasure and like what are the things that please you during the day and how do you taste that? Like use your senses and try to be specific and think about those senses in the way, and I'll send you these questions that I was going to have you kind of work on a little bit today too, because one of them is like asking the question about what do you look like? Who are the people around you? What did it smell like? What did it taste like? You know, kind of those questions to give some thought to, because you want to create that just so that you can embody it, but then it's also flexible because life's a process, right? And we're always growing. So you may get to a point in 3 months or a year from now where you're like, whoa, I'm already that 3-year version of myself. Let's do that meditation again, right? Like I want to see what's coming next. And so, and it doesn't mean that if it's 3 years from now that that's bad. I just mean, you know, like your subconscious starts to work. So part of why too, we're going to go through all of those areas is even though we're going to focus on 3 over the year, your subconscious brain takes over and you start to do work around those other areas without even knowing it. And then when we revisit that, you're like, oh, I did those things. Wow. Or I'm really close to this, right? So looking at that like description, using your senses, what did it feel like? What did it taste like? What did it smell like? What did I see? What did I hear? I remember one time being in a meditation and I was so annoyed. I was at the Gonzaga campus and there were ambulances. Somebody was mowing the yard. Like kids were walking by, college students were walking by chatting. And I was just like, can you all just shut up and let me have this meditation? I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting? I have a lot of noise in my life right now. Right. Like, and so these things may come to you and you may have some awarenesses around them. The second part of the questions, I ask you to close your eyes and see yourself again and notice if anything changed or stayed the same, even from this conversation. And when I say, where do you have it, meaning like, where do you have it? Like, where is that? Like, like, do you feel it somewhere? Is it like, mm. And then where do you feel like you have support as that favorite person? And the reason I say favorite instead of best is best to me sounds judgmental, right?
I
I
like
have,
favorite was good for me. You know, like oh, because your better self, your best self, like that's the more common way it's phrased.
Yeah.
And there was a little like, here's my favorite.
Yeah, because we love all parts of ourselves, right? Where sometimes to me best sound it just sounds judgmental and like I shouldn't love the shadow side of me. And I do love the shadow side of me. But the second part really talks about too, like where you feel like you're feeling support. What support, like what would support you in that physically, emotionally, and healthy person that you see yourself as? Where did you receive help from? Because a lot of times we feel like we can't ask for help or be help. So Chantel, any questions, thoughts, comments? And I'll send you these questions. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to copy and paste them and put them into WhatsApp. And then feel free, please do, like continue to have conversations on the WhatsApp. Because part of what I love about WhatsApp is it'll say unread, like 5 unread messages. And then if you're responding to somebody, do like what you've been doing and hit reply and respond to that particular one.
Mhm.
I'm going
Yeah,
to
I was
send,
just gonna, if you were gonna send the questions, so you answered my question.
okay, perfect. And then I'm going to send you a song that I find puts me into a meditative state. And I was lucky enough to have the artists, they were at this conference that I was at. And if you want to look them up, they're called Wakes, Wakes, but I will actually send that to you on WhatsApp right now. And this song I find just helpful when I'm trying to meditate, and it's beautiful too. So, I think it's a fairly long one too, so don't feel like you have to, you know, like you listen for however long you want to listen. But then I'll shoot these questions over in the WhatsApp here as soon as we get off the phone. Thank you, ladies. Any questions, thoughts in this last minute? Don't forget to sign up for your private client call in May and June. Like
Yeah,
May
I
is
see that.
slipping away. So make sure that you get signed up for that.
I just want to say thank you, and thank you for making a safe space for me to talk about finances. And I want you to know that what I know we don't have like a bunch of time, but I just need to say, especially to Chantel and Shireen, and then whoever's listening to this recording, that I don't feel competitive or greater than or less than. I don't feel comparative. So if you were to tell a story next week about I have $1 million and I don't know if I should spend 350,000 of it on this, I'm not going to be like, oh, well, who does she think she is? She's hot shit. And I'm also not going to think I'm a piece of shit. So I just want to say thank you for creating a safe space for me to talk about what's a big deal to me right now and what feels big. And I am okay with the fact that we're all in different places as it pertains to that. And that perception is not lost on me. So
Thank you.
I also appreciate, I think it's like, there is so much weirdness around talking about money or actual number, but you can actually, I perceive that if you could actually just say the numbers and say the real thing, you know, like there would be a depth to the conversation that would be more beneficial than,
Mhm.
so like when you put all that into perspective, like that helped me, Jessica, understand your thing. And if I needed to put something in, like sometimes I've wanted to say this, that, or the other in groups. And so thank you for not making money this weird thing. And to share freely. I appreciated that.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad this is a safe space because it is weird to talk about it in other places, you know, and it can be uncomfortable. And so, but I know that if this is, we're all talking about our life, our soul, and our, you know, our purpose and all of those things. I don't think we can talk about all of those kinds of freedoms that are accessible to us without talking about things in detail. And so it just felt important to me to be like, hey, I'm going to spend 30,000 bucks on this thing, which is insane because that's 20% of all the money I have.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm going to go spend 10,000 over here. And I'm really going to, I'm going to spend a third of the money that I have. And that feels weighty as opposed to my parents just sold their business. And so I was like, you know, I'm going to have a meltdown over this truck thing yesterday. And my dad's like, we'll figure it out because they just sold their business for 1.7. And so they're feeling it differently than I am.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, but I just thought that context of like where I'm at. And so why does it feel like so much fear or, you know?
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And all of you have a fabulous week. I've thrown the questions in there as well as the song, and we will talk to you next Tuesday.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Bye,
See
you
you
guys.
guys.
Have a great trip, Shireen.
Oh yes, I'm excited. I'm not
I
packed
can't
yet.
wait to see
I'll leave
pictures.
in like 10 minutes.
It's
So.
going to be amazing.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.